Hi Kindle, this is Miss Smith, your English 165 instructor, and I want to offer you some feedback on the key sections of the semi-formal report that you submitted. Now, I am not looking at this version of your sections to grade them, and so therefore I'm not going to be looking at grammar, and I'm not going to be looking too closely at content, but I want to make sure that you're on the right track, and I want to make sure that you're not doing anything that could be a plagiarism issue, because as you know, any issues with plagiarism could cause you to fail your entire report, and that would definitely negatively impact you in the class. And so let's take a look at what you have. And so the first thing I would say is that nowhere in the semi-formal report should you include this type of heading. So what we're doing is we are creating a report that would be acceptable in the workplace. So you don't need this part that I've highlighted at all at any place in the semi-formal report. So just make sure that you follow the guidelines and use the book as a guide as well for how to format all of that. And if you have any questions, let me know. Now, your abstract looks like you've done a good job with it in terms of its structure and it following the ABC format that I'm looking for. I've just glanced at it quickly, but you've given us an overview here, um, and you've told us specifically what you've done in this report, and then you tell us what you recommend. So that's exactly what I'm looking for. One thing I would say though is, and I'll just for the sake of example, I'm going to go ahead and delete this from what we're looking at here in the screen. But for good page design, it's always a good idea for your headings to be larger and more prominent. And so if your heading is the same size as your text, or too close in size, it's hard to tell what's more important or where your sections begin. And so let's try something here. What if we take this from a 12 point and let's just say we make it an 18 point, okay? Do you see the difference already in how that stands out more? Okay, and then there of course there are other things you can do with that. You can leave it here. If you want, you can center it so that it stands out a little bit more in the page. And so usually left margin or center is what's best. And even if you wanted to go a little bit larger, let's say you wanted to make it a size 20, that would still be acceptable. Now your body text size is perfect. 11 or 12 point is what is acceptable. You've used 12 point. And so I just wanted to show you that as a page design feature. You don't want um, your headings to be the same size as your body text. And so whatever you decide to do with this to make it larger, whatever size you use, whether you center it or leave it in the left margin, just keep in mind that you want to be consistent with every single subheading. So you want to do the same exact thing, same exact style for each of your, if that subheadings, each of your headings. You want to use the same style, same exact format, all of that for all of the headings, major headings in your report. So your abstract section, just at quick glance, looks fine. You do want to make sure that you begin these different sections on different pages. And so make sure that you do more than just return, put your cursor in front of the section heading, and then go to Insert Page Break so that it will automatically move it to that next page. Okay? Um, your introduction section is incorrect. And so I want you to go back to the assignment overview and carefully read what I've said about introductions, because there's something I'm looking for and you don't have it here. Now, I will tell you that you do need to include two different subheadings. That's in the overview document. And for the first subheading, um, let's see. Let me see if I can. I would say for that first subheading under introduction, and you'll see what I mean when you go back and review um, the overview document. But for that first subheading, I would take all of this away and just leave this first paragraph for that first subheading. But then you also need to include the second subheading that I tell you about in the overview document and a graphic, okay? I've said in a previous video that you can include a table and use information from ONET. So go back and review all of that so that you're up to speed on all of that. But what you have here will not work for your introduction, okay? You have to change that. Now your discussion section, again, make sure you insert a page break. A heading should never be alone on a page by itself without the text that it relates to. So make sure that you start this section off on its own page. The good news is that you do have 2 pages here, right? A little over 2 pages. So that's good. But there are a couple of problems with this section that I want you to fix. Number one, you always want to use subheadings in professional communication. It helps your audience, right? Your reader, remember we talked about how your reader is distracted and how they are impatient to find important information. Well, the subheadings that you use to break up your text will help the reader pinpoint the information that they need most urgently and go to that section. The people who read your communication in the workplace are not going to start at the very first word in your document and go all the way to the very last word, reading it that way. They're going to look for the information that they need most urgently. And so you want to make that easy for them through your page design by including subheadings, okay? And so you want to make sure that you do that. Now, I've given you subheadings in the document that I gave you with the questions. I don't know if you used that or not. And then the subheadings for the discussion section. So if you did use the questions I gave you, you can open up that second document then and use the subheadings that I gave you. Or you can create your own subheadings. But just make sure that you're breaking up this chunk of text with subheadings, okay? Now, I will say this, I did glance over your section a little bit because I was trying to get a sense of who you shadowed. And I think you have to change your organization a little bit for it to be easier for the reader. So at the very beginning, you're talking about conducting a job shadow at Southern Tank Transport, and I don't know who you're shadowing or the nature of your shadow. And so when you get down here, this last sentence on this first page of the discussion section, you mention that you shadowed Carrie Williams in Human Resources, as well as briefly with Jennifer Bowen in Payroll. And so your discussion section should start with that information. And then you can put in the background about the company, okay? But tell me a little bit about the contact person, right? Tell me about who they are and you know what they're doing. There are some specific things that I'm looking for that you can use to begin that discussion section. And so then after that you could talk about the company that they work for or that she works for. And so that's something that you'll want to make a change to there. And like I said, just make sure that you include subheadings. You also need to make sure that you include in-text citations. Without them, you have a plagiarism issue and your report could fail, right? And that, as I said before, that could negatively impact the entire course for you. And so let's take a look at your references page. We're going to jump ahead a little bit here. And so on your references page, you have Williams, comma, Carey, A, Human Resources Interview, Personal Interview, and then you have the date. You need to take this part out because you don't have to have this part, okay? All you need is personal interview. So let's just say we strike through that, right? Because you don't need that part. But otherwise, that citation looks good. And this citation looks good. But I don't see where you've used either of these in your report. And you're missing one. So let's deal with the first thing. So here in your discussion section, obviously you've gotten this information from Carrie Williams. And so at the end of each paragraph, and again you can break these chunky paragraphs up into smaller ones, but at the end of each paragraph what you can do is put an in-text citation for the Williams citation. Okay, you could put an in-text citation for that Williams full citation. And that's just going to indicate that the information in this paragraph you gained from your interview with Carrie Williams. And so at the end of every paragraph where you're using information that came directly from her, you can put that in-text citation. Now, I hope that you remember what an in-text citation is, but if not, let's just make sure we go over it. This is your full citation, Williams, Carrie A, personal interview, and the date, right? So your in-text citation should be however your full citation begins. In this case, your full citation begins with the word Williams. And so, since you have no other reference that begins that way, you're fine to just use Williams. And so what you would want to do then is, at the end of each paragraph where you talk about something that you gained from Carrie Williams, you want to put in that in-text citation. And it would simply say Williams, and you would put the period on the end. And so now when I see this, it tells me that information in this section was paraphrased to come from Carrie Williams, or will come from Williams. And then when I look in your references page, I will find a full citation that begins with the word Williams. Does that make sense? And so you want to make sure that you put your in-text citation in your report. Now you have again a full citation that begins company history, but I don't see an in-text citation in here for it. And so if there's a sentence or two where you've used information about company history from that company's website, at the end of those sentences you can do the same type of thing. So you can put an in-text citation there for that full citation. It might read company, it might read company history. Either one would be fine, so long as when we get to our references page we can find a full citation that begins the same way that your in-text citation is worded. Okay? And so just make sure that you do that to avoid plagiarism. Now the other part of this is you also need a third source. And so your introduction, like I said, was not done correctly, but one thing I tell you in the overview document is to use information from ONET in your introduction. And so in that second subsection you can use it, and you can use it in creating your table for your visual. You have to have one visual, and that visual must be in the introduction section. And so you want to include a source here for ONET, okay? And so again, ONET will make your life easier. And so let's see, I think you talked to someone in human resources. I'm just going to go to ONET online. What you would do is you would come here, and I'm just doing this for example. Let's say it's human resources, right? That you've spoken to somebody in human resources. And let's say you've selected this one. And we went through all of this with our career analysis assignment. What you want to do is go to the very bottom of the page. You want to look at the information that's there. But when you go to cite it, you want to go to the very bottom of the page and click on this link at the bottom of the social media icons at the bottom of the page. Cite this page and then copy and paste what's here because that is your MLA citation. So ONET will do the citation for you. All you have to do is make sure that you get it onto your references page, and then you use an in-text citation for it. Now keep in mind, when they give you the citation, they're giving it to you first as the numbers in terms of how they categorize that particular career within their system. So the in-text citation for this would be 13-1071.00. That would be the in-text citation because that is how the full citation begins. However, one thing you can do, Kindle, is take a look at the title that is associated with the set of numbers, okay? And you can replace the set of numbers with the actual title. So instead of beginning this with this set of numbers, you can replace that with Human Resources Specialist and begin it that way. Does that make sense? And if you do that, then your in-text citation would be human or human resources or human resources specialist. Okay? The first word or the first few words of your full citation, you know, they have to match. Your in-text and your full citation have to match in terms of how they begin. And so you need that third source, and you can get it very easily from ONET. They will do the citation for you. You just have to make sure that you incorporate it correctly. Okay? So those are the things that jump out at me with your key sections, and you just want to make sure you go back in and definitely fix the things that I've mentioned already. If you have questions, you may have questions, I would love to hear from you. And so contact me so that we can talk about them, so that I can help you make this report as good as it can possibly be. I want it to be a great report for you, and I want it to be a good experience for you. And I see that you say that you're now interested in human resources as a result of this job shadow. So that is pretty awesome. You know, sometimes when we expose ourselves to different fields, we realize we have an interest in them. So I'm glad to hear that you found something that you're very interested in. I'm rooting for you, Kindle, so let me know how I can help you, okay? I'll talk with you soon. Bye-bye.